Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Patrick Lockwood,
Sebastian Georgia.
and this is the Alchemy of the Mind podcast, episode 4. Is that where we're at?
Yep, this is
4.
episode 4. Although I still
Wow.
don't get episode 1, and I plan
Yeah,
to simply delete it. But
yeah. It's a mulligan. Episode 1 was a mulligan. It's there, but it won't be there long, probably.
what's a mulligan? I've actually not heard that.
Mulligan? Oh, it's a golf term for like do-over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This more.
Me and my, huh? Me? Eh? I don't
Mercury
know.
is in retrograde.
That's true. So anything that can go wrong will go wrong,
Yes.
they say. So we've got some fun stuff to talk about today. Let's talk about pride because yes.
Oh yeah. Where's your Yas mug?
I don't know. I forgot it today.
Oh shit.
Sorry.
Where's your pride?
I don't know if I have much.
And hard
So,
work. You do a lot of hard work. You have pride in that, right?
I don't know about that. I always have these discussions about the concept of pride with people where I think it's got so many negative connotations that maybe we should abandon the word. I don't know.
Well, and that's what I always thought too. It's like I've had been in the gay community and watched over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Pride has never been. It's been more like it should be called debauchery and hedonism and bareback.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's really like and that's the side obviously I was exposed to. But like at one point, Black Pigeon Speaks
Mm-hmm.
did a video, and it was really fascinating because he compared Pride in San Francisco,
Uh-huh.
Pride in Japan,
Okay.
and it was just completely different.
Night and day.
Like with what Japan, like what it was about and the culture and that versus like San Francisco obviously is like
Really?
debauchery fest and all that.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking about, like, pride becomes hubris. So what do you think about the distinction there? Because like I was looking at like the biblical term meaning of pride, which is basically is hubris.
Mm-hmm. So it's like ego and arrogance and whatnot.
Yeah, it's just like pride that's and I feel like that's what's happening in the gay community because people are so hyper focused on their identity and
Mm-hmm.
that they're being oppressed, that it is inflating those egos.
Mm-hmm.
Plus it's just marketed, so then again with the culture of reinforcing, everyone's like, yeah, you're special.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw an article the other day about how people are basically companies like Verizon and others are just pandering terribly
Oh
to
yeah.
pride because they have all these advertisements with the rainbow flag and stuff. And, you know, I think there's definitely a lot of ego and it's definitely a big market because there's a lot of spending power in the LGBT world.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a problem with pride because of the biblical argument you just made, in the sense that the original, or not the original, but one of the most commonly held meanings for it is something like, having hubris and kind of this gross sense that I'm special for no good reason, which, again, usually if you're special, you have done something, you have earned something that makes you special and something you can take a fond remembrance in. But the fact that you were
I earned
born,
a dick in a butt.
right? Yeah, I earned the ability to suck a dick, which is like, no, you didn't. You are partially born that way and partially socialized that way. Da 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 da, all that jazz, and that's nothing special. I mean, statistically speaking, they're in the bottom 10% of the population. It's a very small group of people, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily special and you need to have a parade, in my opinion, because there's no part of me that thinks any part of my identity needs a parade. And maybe it's because I have white privilege. I don't know.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think one thing used to be that, having kind of watched, because like when I came out was in 1995,
Uh-huh.
it was definitely like where I went to like, a gay group it was called Globe,
Globe.
lesbian, or bisexual empowerment. And I changed the O into open-minded. That was
Ooh.
my contribution to the group.
Ooh.
But when I went to the group originally, like at that time at 15, it was like, two other awkward kids. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually watched over the next, 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
that it was boom. It was,
Mm.
30 people and like, of course, a huge meat market for
Yeah.
us young teenage boys. But what I was thinking about that is like, then like when there was a pride event, then, right, it was kind of a different beast because it was still counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of ways, right? So it was like, oh, a thing where you could actually go to meet someone, for me, it was like, oh, I can go to Seattle. Maybe I can meet a guy, like where I feel like there was some functions within that like community celebration
Yeah.
when we're more like, not allowed to marry and these things.
Yeah.
I think is that this is flipped, right? And the countercultures went and flipped around.
Yeah.
Now it's like the most like pandery marketed, like, so kind of changed it too, I think.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. And I think South Park caught on to this because, super philosophical and deep, but South Park caught on to this, I think, maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember what season it is. It's like 7 or 8 or something like that. But the title of the episode is South Park is Gay. And it's where gay becomes the new in thing, the new fad. And, they have like not quite straight pride parades and stuff. And it's all commercialistic. And they go after the Queer Eye guys and all this stuff. So a lot of people have seen this kind of thing coming where it's gone from a sense of, we have a community, there's solidarity to, we are this, garishly colorful and garishly, loud and expressive group of people. That's not pride to me. That seems like victimized anger and aggression coming out of shame or something of that nature. It just seems like the community has turned into this, I have to be the loudest noise in the room in order to be accepted, when in reality, all it's doing is pushing people away. So my buddy Tony and I call it gay shame parades, because you tend to act out in the worst possible ways, psychologically speaking, when you're experiencing the strongest feelings of shame.
Yeah. Well, have you seen the new research is showing that like the younger, whatever the next generation is, what is that, Z? Are actually, they're starting to see that maybe they're less LGBTQ friendly.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of the push, the forcefulness of it.
Yeah. That article came out where? I saw the same article, I think. Yeah. Came out this week, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just recent.
And all the commentary I've seen on Twitter, et cetera, has been basically like, well, yeah, no duh. When you keep acting like gross hedonists and you don't actually just acknowledge that it's a part of your identity, not the most important part of you, guess what? You're going to turn everyone off.
Well, and then when you have stuff like you mentioned, like Queer Eye, right? Like, oh, God, when that show came, have you seen it?
Yeah.
When it came back on, I was like, oh, it's so phony and pandery and social justice-y, and they're just so like, hey, girl. They're just so, I don't know, it seems so fake. It seems like personalities built solely around the fact that they're gay.
Right. And my understanding of the people I know in the LGBT whatever the fuck community has been, that's my shorthand, has been, we don't want to be considered stereotypes. We don't want to be associated with stereotypes. And we don't want to be shamed for the fact that we, are in love with the same sex or what have you. And yet then all these television shows, from Will and Grace to Queer Eye to even South Park and Family Guy, have all taken the stereotypes head on and made a big deal about them, as if that's what it means to be gay.
Yeah.
So how are we serving ourselves if we're commercializing the least realistic version of who we are? How does that serve us?
Well, and then imagine how that is now for younger people too, that
right,
sold this image of what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's, especially for young people, it's just so natural to fall into, as they're developing their sense of self, like, to fall into the pattern of who they're perceived to be by the media.
Totally. And
that's why I thought it was weird, the whole media thing of like, oh, I'm not being represented. I'm like, I don't want to be represented by the mainstream media. I don't fucking care.
Right.
To me, the fact that there's people who are like, they're not showing enough gay, and it's like, why do you fucking care? I just don't get that. Like, that's so weird. But that's that consumer culture, I think, that like validation culture, like, and maybe people actually look for that validation from the media.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that?
Yeah, I think that there's the consumer culture problem applies to, homosexual issues and heterosexual issues, both directions. I think one of the main variables that makes the consumer media, consumer culture Worse for the LGBT community is the long-standing sense of internalized homophobia and shame that many people feel or felt when they were growing up and had to hide their identity. And then as a result of finally a more accepting culture, they kind of explode and unleash their shame-based look at me all over the place.
Do you think people feel that much anymore? Like, you know, shame of coming out? Like, I'm sure that's had to have shifted pretty dramatically.
I think to a degree it has, though. I think if you look at like the homeless stats, you know, the youth homeless stats, the substantial majority of homeless youth are LGBT kids. And it's because they have my understanding of the literature is it's because they come from families typically in the middle-ish of the country where I'm from, where, you know, it's not okay to be gay. There's still a fairly strong, stern Christian conservative ethos that runs the place. So they feel ashamed or they feel ousted or they actually are ousted and then they're on the street. So there's still a substantial problem, I think, in certain areas, but on the coasts and on the South, like the South Coast, East, West Coast, I don't think there's much of a serious problem anymore. But in the middle, yeah, I would assume so.
I think there'll be probably more of a problem now with the people who don't fall in line, you know, who aren't within the generalized. Because now the culture is like so reinforcing, like
Sure.
basically like that every gay is like social justice-y, you know, and that it's that narrative.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people like, to me, like I've always said, like I liked about gay culture was that it was more of a question, you know, questioned more. You know, I felt like I like that counterculture aspect of gay culture,
right?
As it was outside the mainstream, you know, and the mainstream sucks. So,
right, and I think rightfully so. The vast majority of people that are that way in gay culture, who adhere to these mainstream ideologies and belief systems and habits, basically, are literally trying to fit in. Because if everyone in mainstream culture is enraged at every little thing that Donald Trump does, it makes sense for the people in gay culture who wish to be accepted by the mainstream to be that same way. You know, as an example, not as a proof of who they are or how they're built, so to speak. Yeah. You know, I just think it's natural to follow trends if you want to be part of the trend. You know,
following. Let's see that for sure. I don't know. Maybe people have always been super prone to group think and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's kept us alive.
But it seems like it's definitely it's peaking because of tech and
social,
you know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think groupthink has been totally set to dialed up to 11, to use this is Spinal Tap reference.
11. You also in the Tesla, you can turn up the volume on the radio to 11.
That's so funny. You know, I think the technology makes it so much easier to light a fire. It just does.
Yeah. Get people worked up and that culture and everything. Yep. Well, did they already have Pride weekend in your neck of the woods, didn't they?
I think LA Pride was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Pride weekend here in Seattle.
Nice.
Which I will not be going to.
No, fair enough.
I will be driving into nature.
There you go.
A nice dose of nature rather than a bunch of fags.
Did you just use the F word?
It's my fake. It's my fake privilege.
Oh, okay. So it's like South Park, the episode where they said it a bunch of times. Cool. Right on. Nice. I think World Pride is this weekend. I think it's today. World Pride in New York City.
World Pride?
Yeah, World Pride.
Like just pride in the world?
Everybody. And everyone comes to New York City to party from every culture.
And it's called World Pride?
It's called World Pride.
We've never even heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Is there like a parade? Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. So that's fun. So do you think we can offer any constructive solutions for these people who feel the need to act out or kind of have shame or whatever? Do you think?
I think people just encourage people to look more, at the multifaceted nature of themselves.
Yeah.
Not be so, set at one, configuration of identifying, limiting.
So you think start with the identity, not with the behavior change?
Well, I'd hope if someone wasn't so hyper-focused on their identity that the behavior would adapt.
Sure.
I think if that's your view of yourself too, God, again, that's why people probably be looking for the culture to validate them. And because if your basis for your character is like, I'm gay, that's what's so unique about me. It's like, well, get a new hobby, learn to do something, interesting that you can have, like, so you can accomplish something and feel pride in your work.
Yeah.
Like when I make jewelry, I would say I felt good. That would be like a sense of pride in like getting it done right and getting it to plate well, and then being like, oh, this is cool, I made this.
Right. So it's an actual accomplishment. So because it's an accomplishment, you feel a sense of pride.
Yeah.
So you would maybe recommend that people do more things that allow them to feel pride, as opposed to
more things than just like, oh, the thing I do is fuck. Like
right.
It's like there's a lot more. Not that fucking isn't important, but there's just a lot more to people. And I find people, of course, too. It's like, if I'm on an app like Scruff or something, and it's just guys who basically are like, it's just, and I get that it's a hookup app too, but like, me, I'd prefer someone who's a little bit like maybe hot and interesting, and
hot and interesting.
But the culture doesn't necessarily enforce that.
Doesn't seem like it. No.
We're both very cheery today.
We're super cheery. The fact that we're not cursing more is phenomenal.
I did say fag.
You did. You said the F word. Terrible. Uh-oh.
Okay, so shall we move on? Did you have any closing statements on pride?
Let's see. No, I don't think so. I think you covered a lot. I think it's an identity problem, and it's also a focus problem. It's a focus on the wrong facets of your life. Yeah, I'm with that. I think I'm with that. Yeah.
Okay, so with the Andy. Go.
Yes. So
explain that.
Yeah, I just saw on Twitter before you and I started recording that a journalist, a writer for the online magazine Quillette, which is kind of independent / conservative, just got assaulted, I think, in your neck of the woods. And I think it was your neck of the woods. It was either
they've been like, there's these guys who are called, I'm just looking it up.
Okay.
Operation Cold Front, and those guys, basically Antifa here has been putting up signs like meet your local fascists and have all these people's photographs and their full names on it. Like Seattle's been getting really aggressive because they're deranged,
They are. And I think
it's surprising to happen here, but Portland's the same.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of people who are moral authority that have been hijacked by fear and they don't,
Yeah, absolutely. So he got attacked by a bunch of Antifa people. There's videos of it online. He's at the hospital, I think, right now. He seems to be okay. He's upright and functional. What?
How's his last name spelled?
NGO.
Oh, NGO.
Andy, no.
I just want to see. He's on face and head multiple times. And Quillette is not even.
Yeah. And he, of all them, is neither inflammatory, generally speaking.
Oh, is he Asian too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's an Asian fascist. And I guess, it's totally a fair thing to think that, that's happened because, we have Mao and we have Pol Pot and whatnot. But I don't think he's anywhere close to Mao or Pol Pot.
Oh, it was Portland.
Portland?
Yeah.
Perfect. So basically a bunch of morons, part of the Antifa movement, because I think they're fucking morons, beat him up. Because only primitive troglodytes engage in violence over ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And they're morons. And they engaged in terrible behavior as he was, I don't know what he was doing. He was walking down the street, taking pictures of things and I guess prepping for an article or something. Beat him up. just today.
Yeah, and I just think they're unfortunately, I think this type of violence is really going to be escalating.
Totally.
I just saw it was in Texas. There was a lot of Cubans.
Uh-huh.
It was a lot of Cubans and who were Trump supporters. But man, the two groups were just getting they were so aggressive with each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is kind of what's to come as we approach 2020.
And again,
realize most likely, that Trump will get office again, and that I don't even know what that will do.
Exactly. That's the problem. If you don't want Orange Man to get into office, you have to stop doing this bullshit, because all you're doing is provoking the other side.
Yeah.
And the more tribalistic we get, guess what? The more we're going to double down on the guy who sounds like a nationalist and acts like a nationalist.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you have, like, if you look at the Democratic, the fucking bullshit that just went on, and they're just so, I think most people are like, I'd hope most people aren't that stupid, and like the level of pandering and stuff that people are just like, what? It's just weird though when they say some bullshit, like Kamala Harris says some of her bullshit, and then everyone, they just cheer so much in the audience.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me, because the people that are going to the Democratic debates are going to be the hardcore, like, DNC people,
Yeah.
Which is it's just so blatantly corrupt, which I think, again, this is what's going to lead to Trump again.
Yeah. I mean,
and they've made the bed. They're making the bed. So
yeah, they're currently making their bed right now. Literally, more action like this is just going to provoke people to say, well, they're not going to be reasonable, so I don't have to be reasonable in return.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's the end of progress, in my opinion.
It's weird. I just don't know how. It's weird to me that people can get so caught up in that they can't, like, self-reflect.
Yeah, this is a strange place we find ourselves in.
So much potential, but so much,
Well, I think it's like you said in one of our prior conversations, this might be this cleansing, purging of our negative urges, etc., where we are in the middle of resetting, what have you, and this is just the gross, nasty period before we rise from the ashes, so to speak.
I mean, do you think there's been periods in history where people acted atrociously, like these liberals that are very illiberal, their behavior? Do you think there's been history where, like, that happened, people got caught up in that group think and then come out of it? Because I feel like in the past, when we see things like the witch trials and these things, they didn't come out of it, they died. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like people were like, oh, what were we doing? We got hysteria.
Well,
that's the idea, is the nature of hysteria is that it grabs a person's emotions and just hijacks them.
Yeah, I think the witchcraft example is probably a good starting point, because in the United States, at the very least, the Salem witch trials was probably one of the first very notable instances of very weird, tribalistic, fear-driven, religion-driven ousting of a group of people who were scary. They're quite that simple. They're just very scary, so they basically murder them on principle, which is basically what Antifa is doing now, or trying to do.
Yeah. Well, it's moral panics. Like there was the satanic panic
in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s, when everyone thought that, the records were Satanist, which is funny, because that was kind of like the more conservative religious side that was, kind of propagating some of that. And now it's flipped, and it's the,
Yeah. It's definitely flipped.
Liberals.
Maybe we can work our way backwards. So now it's political panic. It's nationalist dictator panic, or socialist dictator panic. Either way, they're both dictators. And then before that, it was Islam, hatred, panic. In the 2000, 2012, 2014 panic.
But I
And
felt
then,
like then that wasn't widespread. You know what I mean? It was like, because the social media and things hadn't got, like, the mainstream media was definitely just
yeah,
hammering, right? But
yeah,
I don't feel like it didn't saturate like this has.
no. But I think it got as far as it could go without social media from 2001 to 2008 or whatever. But so I think we have nationalistic or communistic panic now. We had religious panic about Islam and Muslims. And then prior to that, we had black panic because there was racism and Don King and the riots in LA. Before that, it was satanic panic, which is a fun, that should be a band name. And then, yeah. And then before that, in the 70s, it was like hippie panic. And, these crazy communist hippies are going to destroy the world with their drugs and whatnot. And then in the 50s, it was racism panic because a bunch of the United States was very racist and anti,
So now everything's like convoluting together.
right. We're definitely reaching a termination point of, well, since we have unlimited access to all points of view, thanks to the internet and social media.
Not that people actually look at other points of view.
No, but we have access to all the worst parts of humanity at the drop of a pin or a hat or whatever. I mean, it's just, you can literally access any terrible thing you want, from beheading videos to this thing that happened to Andy No to, hates. You can access literally any terrible thing you want at the drop of a hat, and it's not a big deal. So now we can take everything that we've been through historically and put it on blast.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
that's it. But here's the difference too that I think changed is that I think the media, not to say it's not always been corrupt, but I think the media did have more integrity.
sure.
And I think the media, and then of course, once it lost its integrity and just went full on Trump derangement syndrome.
Full retard.
And then tech is also did that too, right? So it's kind of like all sources of information. And now that we know that Google is,
Mm-hmm.
Google is doing evil. Google is evil.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the Project Veritas thing kind of proves everyone's point. Dave Rubin and Tim Pool and all of them. Everyone's been poking at Twitter. Everyone's been poking at Google. Everyone's been poking at Facebook and YouTube. And now the facts are coming out, and it's not looking so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably like the fact I've been shadow banned on Airbnb.
Was that what happened?
I really do think so. It makes no sense that like I would be much busier in the winter. Like I just don't. I have some bookings, but usually these bookings would just be coming in and they stopped. But this is after when I filled out a survey and I commented that they're a whole anti-bias thing where they won't let you see a picture of the guests. I bitched about that in a very civil way. I just said I think most people aren't biased against people's race. It's that they actually just want to see, does a person look friendly in their picture? Like how do they show themselves in a picture to present themselves to you? And then you pair that with how they communicate. And maybe they were like, oh, I doubt that, but now we never know. And there's someone there that gets like, oh, this person, they don't deserve that bookings. Could happen.
It could happen. And I mean, in all fairness, you do look exactly like a white supremacist. So, of course, the gauges and the tattoos and, and the being gay, it's like the epitome of being a white supremacist right there. I mean, all that.
Yeah. The only thing I do now is if I was black, and then I could really be
the biggest hater in the world. That is one of my favorite Dave Chappelle skits from the Chappelle Show, is the black blind white supremacist.
Yeah.
So good.
That's funny. I never saw that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I hope Chappelle comes back on the air at some point.
I hope he comes back and he's very offensive.
He's good at it if he can do it.
I've had more conversations lately where people were recognizing how, these, like I had one today where they were talking about how, like they have friends who are Trump supporters and they're nice people, and, and so it's good to hear those conversations. Give me hope sometimes that people aren't completely cooked.
Cooked.
Is there one other thing you want to cover? Or?
I mean, those are the big things. Again, I think it's a crying shame what happened to Andy. That should not have. We shouldn't have to resort to violence to deal with any of these things.
Just that mentality around, like, thinking that violence is that solution is just screwed up.
Yeah. I think it's real messed up, and it's a real problem. And
they were here in Seattle with that group, Operation Cold Front.
Yeah.
Literally were like, his name's Dion, and I can't remember the other guy's name offhand, but they basically were going around. Their security guard, they had went to all these bars, and these bars would not let him in their bars because they're like, oh, he's a white supremacist. It's so bad. And so they literally did this video on the streets, and these just drunk and just stupid people who were just like, you're a transphobe, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, he's like, great, you read the poster. Actually, I live on Capitol Hill. I have lots of gay and trans friends, but it's just so weird that people like that they view it, it's because they see them as evil.
Yeah.
So if you think they're evil, then you think they would just lie and say they have trans friends to try to hide their white supremacy.
Wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem, is that the left views the right as evil. And I think where the right just views the left is insane. Probably. So
crazy or evil, man. Dealer's choice there.
Crazy or evil. That is crazy and evil.
Yeah.
2020.
Those are kind of your choices.
Yep.
What was it? I don't know if this was you that sent it to me. Someone sent me a video of some crazy woman who was at a restaurant, and a cop was walking by or something, and she was some kind of Antifa or whatever, and she started charging at the cop, and then he picks her up and he choke slams her onto the ground as she's trying to assault him. And it gave me such a sense of relief just watching, because at least one of them is getting the shit beat out of them. And no, I'm not inciting violence, just so we're perfectly clear.
Never.
However, it was really satisfying. Like that comment I made in my one video about seeing Richard Spencer get punched. It's kind of satisfying.
Oh, about seeing him get punched?
Yeah, super satisfying.
Such a douche.
I'm having lighting issues here. You're having some lighting issues. You're so bright.
I'm having a problem. The sun started coming in from up there, so it's like lighting one part of my head. Oh,
wow. Clearly.
Trying to realize, oh, it's up there. That's, but I am an angel, so just
you are an angel. Go to Sebastian for the angelic view.
Angelic view.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
mm-hmm.
I think that we got it about covered.
I think we got it mostly covered. What else should we say? Should we say anything else? What should we do? What should we offer people? Let's offer some people something positive, because we've been fairly negative for today. What's something positive we can offer people here? You said you've been having better conversations, which is great.
Yeah. I think people just need to question everything more.
Yes.
And question their beliefs.
Yeah.
It's so funny that people won't look at their own. They'll look at someone who's like Christian and be like, oh, they just have their set beliefs and they're stuck in this dogma. And it's like, you're stuck in dogma too. We all have to constantly be that's like waking up is like a constant process.
Mm-hmm.
Never woke. We're only waking up. We're waking
nice.
up. We're waking up, right?
Sam Harris's podcast.
Yes. No, I wasn't really promoting Sam Harris.
Fits.
Yeah. And then what about you?
What about me? Something positive I can leave with people. So here's this. If you are listening to this, I don't know why. If you're listening to this and you have the sense that the world is getting out of control and that things are going to get much worse before they get better, that's okay. Because the nice thing is everything is temporary. These violent morons in Antifa are a temporary crew. Because there was a time when the Black Panthers were terribly active and nasty, aggressive people did terrible terrorist kinds of things. Same thing with the KKK. Both of those groups have had their heyday of doing very aggressive, nasty things. And in good measure, over time, they shriveled up because the world had enough of their nasty, aggressive stupidity.
Yeah.
And I propose the same thing is going to happen with the crazy alt-right people and the crazy Antifa morons. I really think that their days are numbered, and the more we have reasonable conversation, think through ideas like you're talking about, question ourselves. Questioning ourselves is perhaps the best thing, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's definitely coming to an end because there are lots of people talking about how stupid these people are and how dangerous they are and how much they need to go.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think too, I'm wondering, I think it probably has to get worse before it gets better, but I think
sure.
too, as things maybe destabilize a bit, it'll pull people's heads out of their asses, and they'll be like, oh wait, it's like, and they'll maybe have a little bit of gratitude, and not so much entitlement with challenge. But I think it's going to take challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but it's doable. There's always hope.
Doable. It's always doable.
Yep. Always doable.
Awesome.
Well, it's been a good chat. Again, I am Dr. Patrick Lockwood, and this is
Sebastian DeRosa.
And we are here on the Alchemy of the Mind podcast. Yeah. Hopefully something here changed your mind. If not, maybe next time. Right on. So please find us on YouTube, follow us there, like and subscribe and share, and find us on minds.com. And we will see you guys hopefully in a week. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Take care.